Lost Child told Vampire King Mama said never talk to monsters. Then he saw her. Bruises Chapter 1. The girl who didn't run. Thelly smelled of rain and rust. Alara pressed her back against the brick wall, clutching the small hand in hers so tightly she feared the bones might snap. The child, a girl, no more than 6, had stopped crying. That was worse. Silence meant shock, and shock meant the bruises on her thin arms weren't the first. Mama said never talk to monsters. The girl whispered. Alara's throat tightened. She'd found the child huddled beside a dumpster 3 blocks from the shelter, shivering in a torn nightgown. No coat, no shoes, just a constellation of fingerprint bruises blooming purple across her collarbone. I'm not a monster, Alara murmured, though the words felt hollow. She'd been called worse. Footsteps echoed from the mouth of the alley. Alara's pulse spiked. She'd taken the back route deliberately. The shelter was closed for the night, and the police station was 6 blocks east. She'd planned to carry the girl there herself, but the streets weren't safe after dark. Not in this part of the city. Not for women alone. The footsteps slowed. A man stepped into view, silhouetted against the distant street lamp. Tall, broad-shouldered. His coat hung long and dark, and when he tilted his head, the faint glow caught the sharp line of his jaw. You're bleeding, he said. Alara's free hand flew to her temple. Her fingers came away wet. She hadn't noticed adrenaline had dulled the sting, but now she felt it, the throb where she'd struck her head on the dumpster's edge while crouching to reach the child. It's nothing, she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. The man took a step closer. The girl's grip tightened. Monster, she breathed. Alara frowned. The child was staring at the stranger with wide, glassy eyes. Not fear. Exactly. Recognition. The man stopped. For a long moment, he simply stood there, hands loose at his sides, his gaze fixed on the girl. Then, slowly, he crouched. His movements were deliberate, almost cautious, as though approaching a wounded animal. She's right, he said quietly. Alara blinked. What? Your daughter? She's right to be afraid. She's not. Alara bit off the correction. It didn't matter. We're fine. Please leave us alone. The man's eyes shifted to her. In the dim light, they looked wrong, too pale to reflective, like a cat's caught in headlights. You're bleeding in an alley after midnight with an injured child. You're not fine. Alara's jaw tightened. She hated that he was right, hated the calm certainty in his voice, the way he spoke, as though her denial was irrelevant. I'm taking her to the police, she said. No, you're not. The words weren't a threat. They were a fact. Alara's heart hammered. She shifted, angling her body between the girl and the stranger. I don't know who you think you are, someone who knows what happens to children who go into the system with marks like hers. His gaze dropped to the girl's arms. They ask questions. They take photographs. They send her back. Alara's stomach turned. She'd seen it before. Worked at the shelter long enough to know the statistics, the failures, the children who slipped through cracks wide enough to swallow them whole. What do you suggest? She asked, hating the waver in her voice. The man rose to his full height. Bring her to me. Absolutely not. Then she'll die. The bluntness of it stole her breath. Alara stared at him, searching for cruelty in his expression, but found only cold pragmatism. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't enjoying this. He was simply stating a fact, the way one might comment on the weather. You don't know that, Alara said. I do. The girl whimpered. Alara looked down. The child's eyes had glazed over, her breathing, shallow and rapid. Shock was setting in deeper now, pulling her under. Alara had seen it in the shelter, the way trauma could shut a body down, piece by piece, until nothing remained but a shell. She needs a hospital, Alara said desperately. She needs safety. The man's voice softened, just barely. And you can't give her that. Alara's throat burned. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he was wrong, that she could protect this child, that she wasn't as broken as everyone thought. But the words wouldn't come. Because he was right, she couldn't even protect herself. The stranger extended a hand. I have a place, warm, quiet. No one will find her there. Why would you help us? His pale eyes held hers. Because no child should be afraid of monsters. The irony wasn't lost on her. Alara glanced at the girl, then back at the man. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to take the child and bolt. But her legs were shaking, her head was bleeding, and the night was closing in like a fist. If you hurt her, Alara said slowly, I will find a way to end you. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. I believe you. He turned and walked toward the alley's far end, where shadows pooled thick and impenetrable. Alara hesitated, her pulse roaring in her ears. Then, against every rational thought, she lifted the girl into her arms and followed. The child's voice was so faint Alara almost missed it. Mama was right. Alara's chest ached. About what, sweetheart? Monsters are real, and as they stepped into the dark behind the stranger, Alara couldn't help but agree. Chapter 2. The house that breathed. The building stood at the end of a street Alara didn't recognize. It wasn't abandoned, not quite. The windows were intact, the stonework clean, but something about it felt removed from the world around it, as though the structure existed half a step outside of time, untouched by the graffiti and grime that marked every other surface in this part of the city. The man produced no key. He simply pressed his palm to the door, and it opened. Alara's arms ached from carrying the girl, but she didn't set her down. Not yet. Not until she understood where they were and what she'd agreed to by following a stranger into the night. Inside, the air was different, cooler, cleaner. It smelled faintly of old paper and something she couldn't name, something mineral and dark. Like wet stone, the man closed the door behind them. The lock engaged with a soft click that seemed to final. Upstairs, he said. Second door on the left. Alara didn't move. What is this place? Safe. That's not an answer. He turned to face her fully for the first time since they'd entered. In the low light of the foyer, she could see him more clearly now. His features were sharp, almost severe high cheekbones, a mouth that looked unused to smiling, eyes that carried the weight of something ancient. He couldn't have been older than 35, but he moved like someone who'd forgotten what it meant to be young. It's a house, he said evenly. It has beds, running water, and locks on the doors. That's all you need to know tonight. Alara's jaw tightened. She hated being dismissed, hated the way he spoke to her, as though her questions were irrelevant. But the girl in her arms was trembling, and her own head throbbed with each heartbeat. She climbed the stairs. The second door opened into a small bedroom. Clean white linens, a nightstand with a lamp already lit, a window with heavy curtains drawn tight against the dark. Alara lowered the girl onto the bed as gently as she could. The child didn't wake. Shock had finally pulled her under completely. Her breathing was shallow but steady. There's a bathroom through there. The man stood in the doorway, not entering. Bandages in the cabinet, clothes in the wardrobe. Alara looked up sharply. Whose clothes? No one's. His expression didn't change. Not anymore. The words hung heavy in the air. Alara wanted to press, to demand answers, but exhaustion was setting in. Her hands were shaking. The cut on her temple had started to sting in earnest now, a hot pulse that made her vision blur at the edges. The man's gaze flicked to her forehead. You should tend to that. I'm fine. You're bleeding on my floor. Alara glanced down. A thin trail of red had dripped onto the hardwood. She touched her temple again and winced. Sit, the man said. I need to stay with her. She's unconscious. She won't know you've left. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the hallway. There's a washroom at the end of the hall. I'll watch her. Every instinct told Alara not to trust him. But her head was pounding, and the room had started to tilt in a way that suggested she might pass out if she didn't sit down soon. 5 minutes, she said. Take 10. She brushed past him, hating how close they had to stand in the narrow doorway. He smelled like cold air and something darker, iron, maybe. Blood. The thought made her stomach turn. The washroom was immaculate. White tile, brass fixtures, a mirror that reflected her pale, hollow-eyed face back at her. Alara braced her hands on the sink and breathed. What was she doing? She'd followed a stranger into an unmarked building in the dead of night with a traumatized child in her arms. She had no phone. She'd left it at the shelter when her shift ended. No one knew where she was. If this man wanted to hurt her, there would be no one to stop him. But he hadn't hurt her. He'd barely touched her. Alara opened the cabinet and found bandages, antiseptic, cotton pads all neatly arranged, as though someone had been expecting an injury. She cleaned the cut carefully, hissing as the alcohol bit into the wound. It wasn't deep, but it had bled more than she'd realized. Head wounds always did. When she returned to the bedroom, the man was standing exactly where she'd left him. He hadn't moved, hadn't stepped inside. The girl still slept, her small chest rising and falling beneath the blanket. Someone he had draped over her. She'll need a doctor, Alara said quietly. In the morning, she might have internal injuries. She doesn't. He said it with such certainty that Alara stopped. Bruises, malnutrition, exhaustion, nothing that won't heal with rest and food. How do you know? His pale eyes met hers. I can hear her heartbeat. It's steady. The floor seemed to shift beneath Alar's feet. She stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the smirk, some indication that he was mocking her. But his expression remained perfectly neutral. That's not possible, she said. No, he agreed. It shouldn't be. Alar's pulse hammered in her throat. The girl's words echoed in her mind. Monsters are real. What are you? She whispered. The man tilted his head slightly, as though considering whether to answer. Then slowly, he smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. It was the smile of something that had learned to imitate humanity, but had never quite mastered warmth. Dangerous, he said softly. But not to you. Alar's hands curled into fists. I want the truth. You're not ready for it. Try me. He stepped closer. Not threatening, just close enough that she could see the unnatural stillness in him. The way his chest didn't rise and fall with breath. The way his skin looked too smooth, too pale, like carved marble. Go to sleep. Alara, he said. We'll talk in the morning. She froze. I never told you my name. His smile widened, sharp as a blade. I know. Chapter 3. The morning after. Dark Alara didn't sleep. She'd locked herself in the bedroom with the girl, dragged a chair beneath the doorknob, and spent the night sitting upright against the headboard with a letter opener she'd found in the nightstand clutched in her fist. The man the thing hadn't knocked, hadn't tried the door, but she'd heard him moving through the house all night, footsteps that never quite settled into rhythm, the creak of floorboards in rooms she couldn't see. Once, around 3 in the morning, she'd heard him speaking low, controlled words in a language that sounded like broken Latin threaded with something older. He wasn't alone in this house, or he was talking to himself. Neither possibility comforted her. When gray light, finally, seeped through the gaps in the curtains, Alara released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. The girl stirred beside her, small fingers curling into the blanket. Where's Mama? The child's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. Alara's chest tightened. She'd been dreading this question all night. I don't know, sweetheart, but you're safe now. Am I? The doubt in those 2 words nearly broke her. Alara smoothed the girl's tangled hair back from her face, careful not to touch the bruises. I'm going to make sure you are. I promise. The girl's eyes dark brown, too old for a 6-year-old, searched Alara's face. Mama said promises are lies people tell when they're leaving. Alara's throat burned. I'm not leaving. A knock at the door made them both flinch. I've made breakfast. The man's voice came through the wood, calm and even. The child needs to eat. Alara's grip tightened on the letter opener. We're fine. You've been awake for 9 hours. She hasn't eaten in longer. A pause. I'm leaving the tray outside the door. The food isn't drugged, if that's your concern. That's exactly my concern. Then don't eat it. His footsteps retreated down the hall. But she should. Alara waited 5 full minutes before moving the chair and cracking the door open. A silver tray sat on the floor, toast with butter and jam, soft scrambled eggs, a glass of milk, sliced strawberries. The kind of meal you'd make for a frightened child. She brought it inside and locked the door again. The girl ate slowly, mechanically, as though she'd forgotten how food was supposed to taste. Alara watched her, noting the way she flinched at every small sound, the way she kept glancing toward the window as though planning an escape route. What's your name? Alara asked gently. The girl swallowed a bite of toast. Lily. That's a beautiful name. Lily didn't respond. She pushed the strawberries around her plate with one finger, then looked up at Alara with those 2 old eyes. Is he going to drink our blood? Alara's stomach dropped. What? The monster downstairs. Mama said monsters drink blood. He's not. Alara stopped. She didn't know what he was. Didn't know what she'd brought this child into. Did your mama tell you about monsters often? Lily nodded. She said they're real. She said they walk around looking like people, but they're not. They're cold and they don't breathe, and they live forever. She took another bite of toast. She said if I ever met one, I should run. Why didn't you run last night? Lily's expression flattened. Couldn't run from Mama's boyfriend. Can't run from monsters either. The casual way she said it made Alara's hands shake. She set down her own untouched toast and knelt beside the bed. Lily, I need you to listen to me. I don't know what that man downstairs is, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to keep you safe. Do you understand? Lily studied her for a long moment. You promise? Yes, okay. The girl returned to her eggs. But Mama was right about one thing. What's that? You can't trust the pretty ones. They're always the worst. Alara found him in the kitchen. He stood at the counter with his back to her, pouring tea from a ceramic pot into the cups. He'd changed clothes, dark trousers, a white shirt rolled to the elbows. In daylight, he looked almost human. Almost. She ate, Alara said. Good. He didn't turn around. There's more if she's still hungry. We're leaving. Now he turned. His pale eyes swept over her, taking in the letter opener still clutched in her hand, the exhaustion written across her face. Where will you go? That's none of your business. It became my business when you followed me home. He picked up both teacups and crossed to the small table by the window. Sit. I'm not sit, Alara. Please. The word please sounded foreign in his mouth, unpracticed. You want answers. I'll give them to you. But you need to sit before you fall down. She hated that he was right. Again, her knees were weak, her head still throbbing despite the bandage. She sat. He placed a cup in front of her. Earl Grey, no sugar. You don't like sweet things. Alara's blood ran cold. How do you know that? I know a great many things about you. He took the seat across from her, folding his hands on the table. You work at Steedy, Catherine's shelter. You've been there 3 years. You live alone? In a studio apartment 6 blocks west. You take the same route home every night. You don't own a car. You haven't spoken to your sister in 14 months. Alara's fingers tightened around the letter opener. You've been watching me. Yes. The honesty of it stunned her. Why? Because 3 weeks ago, you stopped a man from beating his partner in the street. You stood between them even though he was twice your size. Even though you knew he could hurt you. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his voice, something that might have been respect. That kind of recklessness is rare. I wanted to understand it, so you stalked me. I protected you. Alara laughed, sharp and bitter. From what? From the man who followed you home that Tuesday. From the dealer who tried to pull you into the alley on Friday. From the drunk who cornered you outside the shelter last Sunday. He leaned forward slightly. You really should pay more attention to your surroundings, Alara. This city eats people like you. Her mouth went dry. She didn't remember a man following her. Didn't remember being cornered. But the days blurred together when you work 70 hours a week trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. What are you? She whispered. He held her gaze. Vampire. The word landed between them like a stone. Alara waited for him to laugh, to take it back. But he simply sat there, patient and still, watching her process the impossible. That's insane, she said. Yes, vampires aren't real. And yet, she stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I'm taking Lily and leaving. Don't follow us. They'll kill her. Alara froze. Who? The house that's hunting her. He rose slowly, hands open at his sides. House Thorn. They've been searching for her for 3 days. Why? His jaw tightened. Because she's seen something she shouldn't have. Chapter 4. Blood. Dead. Alara's voice came out flat. What did she see? The vampire, because apparently that's what he was, what he claimed to be, what every rational part of her mind screamed couldn't be true, moved to the window. He pulled the curtain aside an inch, studying the empty street below with the focus of a predator marking territory. A feeding, he said. House Thorn doesn't bother with discretion anymore. They've grown bold, careless. His fingers tightened on the curtain. The child's mother witnessed Lord Thorn draining a city councilman in an alley behind the Rosewood Hotel. She ran, took the girl, tried to hide. Alara's stomach turned. And House Thorn found her 2 nights ago. He let the curtain fall. They made it look like a domestic incident. Boyfriend with a history of violence. No one questions those deaths. No one investigates too closely. But Lily got away. Barely. He turned back to face her. She's a loose end. And House Thorn doesn't leave loose ends. Breathing. Alara sank back into the chair, her mind racing. This was insane. Vampires, houses, political murders dressed up as domestic violence. It sounded like something from a bad Gothic novel, not reality, but the bruises on Lily's arms were real. The terror in her eyes was real, and this man, this thing standing in front of her, had known her name without being told, had moved through the night without breathing, had heard a child's heartbeat from across a room. Why did you help us? Alara asked quietly. Something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion, more like the memory of it. Because I'm tired of watching children die. That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get today. He crossed to a cabinet and pulled out a leather-bound book, setting it on the table between them. You need to understand the world you've walked into. The rules, the debts, the houses. Alara stared at the book. The cover was unmarked, but the leather was old, centuries old, from the look of it. I don't want to understand. I want to take Lily somewhere safe and forget this ever happened. There is nowhere safe. Not from House Thorn. He opened the book to a page covered in handwritten script. But there are rules. Laws older than this city. Older than this country. And if you're clever, you can use them. Despite herself, Alara leaned forward. The script was in English, but the phrasing was archaic, formal. Like reading a legal document from the 18th century. What is this? The Covenant of Houses. The laws that govern vampire society. He traced a finger down the page. Here, Article 12. No house may harm a mortal under the formal protection of another house without declaring blood feud. Alara's pulse quickened. You're saying if you claim to be protecting us, House Thorn can't touch you without starting a war. He closed the book. And they're not ready for war. Not yet. Why would you do that? You don't know us. His pale eyes met hers. I know enough. The weight in those words made her chest tighten. She thought of what he'd said earlier, that he'd been watching her, protecting her. For 3 weeks, the stranger had been a shadow at her back, and she'd never noticed. What's your name? She asked. He hesitated, as though the question surprised him. Dorian. Dorian what? Just Dorian. I gave up my house name a long time ago, but you were part of a house. Once. The word carried centuries of weight. Not anymore. Alara studied him. He stood perfectly still, but there was tension in the set of his shoulders, the line of his jaw. Whatever house he'd belonged to, leaving it had cost him. If you claim protection over us, she said slowly, what does that make us to you? Wards, guests, dependents. He paused. Mine. The possessiveness in that single word sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear exactly. Something more complicated. And what do you get out of this? Alara asked. The satisfaction of irritating House Thorn, that's all? Dorian's mouth quirked, not quite a smile, but close. I'm a simple creature, liar. The word slipped out before she could stop it. His almost smile widened. Perhaps a creak from upstairs made them both look toward the ceiling. Lily was awake, moving around. Alara stood. I need to check on her. Wait. Dorian caught her wrist. His skin was cool, smooth as marble. Before you go back up there, you need to know something. What? The protection only works if you stay here, under this roof. The moment you leave, House Thorn can claim you're unprotected. They'll take her, and they'll kill you for harboring her. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. For how long? Until I can negotiate terms. A week. Maybe 2. I can't just disappear for 2 weeks. I have a job, bills, people expecting me. You're a volunteer at the shelter. You live alone. Your rent is paid through the month. Dorian's grip on her wrist tightened fractionally. You won't be missed, Alara. Not the way you think. The truth of it hit harder than it should have. He was right. She could vanish for 2 weeks and no one would raise an alarm. Maybe someone at the shelter would wonder. Maybe her landlord would notice when next month's rent didn't arrive. But there would be no search parties. No worried calls. She'd built her life to be small, invisible, safe. And now that invisibility was the only thing keeping her alive. Okay, she whispered. We'll stay. Dorian released her wrist. Good. I'll make the formal declaration tonight. By dawn, every house in the city will know you're under my protection. And if House Thorn doesn't care about your laws, his expression went cold. Dangerous. Then they'll learn why it's a mistake to underestimate a vampire who has nothing left to lose. Alara found Lily standing at the bedroom window, peering through a gap in the curtains at the street below. Looking for something? Alara asked gently. Lily didn't turn around. Mama used to watch the street like this. Every night. She said you had to know when they were coming. When who was coming? The bad men. Lily's breath fogged the glass. The ones who hurt people. Alara moved to stand beside her, careful not to touch. Lily. What did you see? The night your mama died? The girl's small hands curled into fists against the windowsill. A man, tall, pretty, like the one downstairs, but meaner. He had mama's boss against the wall. And he was. She swallowed hard. He was drinking him. Drinking? From his neck. There was so much blood. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. Mama grabbed me and ran. We hid in the church for 2 days. But they found us anyway. Alar's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Is he going to drink us too? The pretty monster downstairs? No, Alara said it with more certainty than she felt. He's going to keep us safe. Lily finally looked up at her. How do you know? Because he promised. And I think he's the kind of monster who keeps his promises. The girl considered this, then nodded slowly. Okay, but if he tries to drink you, I'm going to stab him. Despite everything, Alara almost smiled. Deal. Chapter 5. The declaration night fell like a curtain dropping. Alara had watched the sun sink below the roofline from the kitchen window, tracking its descent with a growing sense of unease. Dorian had spent the day moving through the house with purpose, closing shutters, lighting candles, making phone calls in that broken Latin language she couldn't understand, preparing for something. You should eat, he said. Appearing in the doorway so silently she jumped, Alara pressed a hand to her chest. Don't do that. I've been standing here for 30 seconds. That's not better. She turned back to the window, wrapping her arms around herself. When does this declaration happen? Midnight. At the neutral ground, which is the old cathedral on Ashford Street. Consecrated ground. No violence permitted within its walls. By covenant law, he moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the absence of warmth radiating from him. I'll go alone. You and the child stay here. Like hell. His head turned sharply. This isn't negotiable. You're claiming protection over us. Over me. Alara met his gaze, refusing to look away despite the inhuman intensity there. I deserve to see what that means. What it means, Dorian said carefully, is that I stand before the gathered houses and declare you mine to protect. It means I invoke laws older than your bloodline and bind myself to your defense. It means he stopped, jaw tightening. It means I paint a target on my back, and you don't need to watch it happen. Why would it make you a target? Because I have no house, no allegiance, no army standing behind me. His voice dropped lower. Because I'm the vampire every house would prefer to see dead, and offering my protection to mortals gives them legal grounds to challenge me. Alara's stomach dropped. Then don't do it. Too late. The decision is made. Dorian, you want to help? He turned to face her fully, and for the first time she saw something raw beneath his controlled exterior. Stay alive. Keep the child safe. Don't make me regret this. The vulnerability in those words stole her breath. She'd thought him cold, distant, barely tethered to humanity. But standing this close, she could see the weight he carried, centuries of it, pressing down on shoulders that had forgotten how to bend. I won't, she said quietly. I promise. He studied her face for a long moment, searching for something. Then slowly, he nodded. There's food in the refrigerator. Bread, cheese, fruit, human food. I keep it for, he stopped. For nights when I have guests. Do you have guests often? No, the word was soft, final. Not anymore. He left without another sound, dissolving into shadows as though he'd never been solid at all. Alara found Lily in the library. She hadn't known the house had a library until she'd gone searching for the child and discovered her curled in an oversized leather chair, surrounded by towers of books. Old books. The kind with gilt edges and leather bindings that smelled of dust and time. Can you read? Alara asked from the doorway. Lily looked up, her finger marking her place in a volume that looked far too advanced for a 6-year-old. Mama taught me. Before? Before what? Before the boyfriend. Lily returned her attention to the book. Before she got tired. Alara's chest ached. She crossed the room and knelt beside the chair, careful to stay at the girl's level. What are you reading? Fairy tales. But weird ones. The princess doesn't get saved. She saves herself. Lily traced a finger over an illustration, a woman in a dark gown standing over a slain dragon. I like her better. Me too. Alara glanced at the other books stacked nearby. Did Dorian say you could read these? He told me the library was mine if I wanted it. Lily turned the page carefully, reverently. He said knowledge is the only thing nobody can take from you. Not even if you die. The casual mention of death made Alara's throat tighten. He said that? He brought me hot chocolate too. With tiny marshmallows. Lily finally looked at her, those two old eyes searching. Is he really going to keep us safe? Or is that a lie? I think, Alara said slowly, he's going to try very hard. But the world is complicated, Lily. Sometimes even people, even monsters who want to protect us can't, because bad things happen anyway. Yes. Lily closed the book and set it on the stack. Mama used to say that. She said bad things happen, and we just have to be tougher than them. Her voice wavered. But she wasn't tough enough. So how am I supposed to be? Alara reached out carefully, giving Lily time to pull away. When she didn't, Alara rested her hand over the girl's small, cold fingers. You're tougher than you think. You survived. You're still here. That's not nothing. Will you stay? Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. Even if it's scary? Even if it's scary. Promise? Alara thought of Lily's earlier words. Promises are lies people tell when they're leaving. She thought of her own sister, who'd promised to stay sober and hadn't. Of her mother, who'd promised things would get better, and then walked into the ocean one October morning. Promises were dangerous things, but sometimes they were all you had. I promise, Alara said. Cross my heart. Lily studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but if you break it, I'm keeping all these books, despite everything. Alara smiled. Deal. Dorian returned at dawn. Alara had dozed on the library sofa, with Lily curled against her side, the borrowed fairy tale book still open in her lap. She woke to the sound of the front door closing and the subsequent silence that followed. Too much silence. She extracted herself from Lily carefully and found Dorian in the kitchen, standing motionless at the counter. His white shirt was torn at the shoulder. Dark stains blood, she realized with a jolt, spotted the fabric. His hands gripped the counter's edge hard enough that the wood groaned. What happened? Alara demanded. It's done. His voice was flat, empty. You're protected. You're hurt. I'm fine. You're bleeding. I'm dead. Bleeding is relative, but when he lifted one hand to touch his shoulder, his fingers came away red. It's not mine. The words should have been reassuring. They weren't. Alara moved closer, her nursing instincts overriding her fear. Let me see. It's nothing. Let me see, Dorian. He went very still. Then slowly, he turned to face her. In the pre-dawn light filtering through the windows, he looked haggard, ancient. The inhuman perfection of his features was cracked by exhaustion, by something that looked almost like pain. She reached for his shoulder and he didn't stop her. The fabric came away easily, already half destroyed. Beneath, his skin was unmarked, perfect, but the blood was real, and it wasn't his. Whose blood is this? She asked quietly. House Thorne's second. He objected to the declaration. Dorian's jaw tightened. Objected loudly. Is he dead? No. But he'll remember not to challenge me again. Alara's hands were shaking. She forced them. Still. What did you do? What? I had to. He caught her wrist gently, stopping her from touching him further. The declaration is binding now. House Thorne can't touch you without declaring formal war. They won't. Not yet. They'll try other methods first. What methods? His pale eyes met hers. That's what we're going to prepare for. Chapter 6. Lessons in Darkness. Dorian didn't sleep. Alara had noticed it the first night, but now, 3 days into their forced cohabitation, the pattern was undeniable. He moved through the house at all hours, reading in the library while she and Lily slept, standing sentinel at windows, disappearing into the basement for hours at a time. On the 4th morning, she confronted him. When do you rest? She asked, finding him in the study surrounded by maps of the city. Red pins marked locations she didn't recognize. I don't. He didn't look up from the map. Not the way you do. Everyone needs rest. I'm not everyone. He moved a pin 2 inches west. House Thorne has been probing the perimeter. 3 nights running. They're testing my response time. Alara moved closer, studying the map. The red pins formed a loose circle around a central point. This house. Are we safe here? For now. He finally looked at her, and she saw the strain in his features. Subtle. But they're patient. They'll wait for me to make a mistake. Then don't make one. His mouth quirked. Simple as that? You're the one who's survived centuries. I assume you know something about patience. I know about survival. That's different. He turned back to the map, his fingers tracing the circle of pins. Survival is reactive. What we need is strategy. The word hung between them. Dorian's hand stilled on the map. You want to help, he said. Not a question. I want to understand. If House Thorne is hunting us, I need to know what we're facing, how they think, what they want. Alara crossed her arms. You can keep treating me like fragile cargo, or you can treat me like someone with a brain. I've never thought you fragile. Then stop protecting me from information. Dorian studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he pulled out a chair. Sit. She sat. He moved to the bookshelf and retrieved a leather journal, setting it before her. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, sketches, what looked like family trees. House Thorn, he began, is one of 7 great houses in the city. They control the port, the docks, most of the industrial waterfront. Their power base is built on labor exploitation and trafficking, human and otherwise. Alar's stomach turned. Trafficking? They feed on the desperate, the forgotten. People no one will miss. His voice was clinical, detached. Lord Thorn himself is 300 years old, ruthless, strategic. He's built his house by eliminating competition and absorbing smaller bloodlines. And the councilman Lily's mother saw him kill, was blocking a zoning proposal that would have given House Thorn access to the eastern warehouses. He died. The proposal passed. Dorian turned a page, revealing a sketch of a sharp-featured man with cold eyes. That's Thorn. Memorize his face. Alara studied the drawing. Something about the eyes made her skin crawl. They were drawn with such precision that they seemed to follow her gaze. Why would he be careless enough to feed in public? She asked. Arrogance. He's been operating unchecked for decades. The city turns a blind eye. Half the police department is on his payroll, and the other half is too terrified to intervene. Dorian's jaw tightened. He's not used to witnesses, and he's certainly not used to them surviving. But Lily did, because her mother was smart enough to run to consecrated ground. The church on Hamilton Street. House Thorn couldn't follow without violating covenant law. He flipped to another page, a map of the city with certain buildings marked in silver. These are sanctuaries. Consecrated spaces where violence is forbidden. Churches, certain historic sites, the old courthouse. Alara committed them to memory. How long can someone survive in sanctuary? Indefinitely. But they can't leave. The moment they step outside, they're vulnerable again. His finger traced the map. Lily's mother made it to days. She probably thought she could outlast them, or that someone would help. No one did. No one could. House Thorn owns this city's silence. Dorian closed the journal. That's why your protection is tenuous. If they can't kill you directly, they'll destroy everything around you until you have nothing left to lose. I already have nothing left to lose. The words came out harder than she'd intended. Dorian's gaze sharpened. That's not true, he said quietly. Isn't it? I have no family, no real friends, a job that pays barely enough to cover rent. I'm 28 years old, and my entire life fits in a studio apartment. Alara met his eyes. I'm exactly the kind of person House Thorn feeds on. Desperate, forgotten, invisible. You're not invisible to me. The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. She looked away first. Why do you care? She asked. Really? Not the speech about protecting children, or irritating House Thorn. The truth. Dorian was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then because you remind me of someone. Who? Someone I failed to save. The weight in those words pressed against her chest. Alara wanted to push, to demand more, but something in his expression, grief, old and deep, stopped her. Instead, she asked, what happened to your house? The one you left? His hands curled into fists on the table. I didn't leave. I destroyed it. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Why? Alara whispered. Because they became everything I swore I'd never be. Predators. Monsters in truth, not just in nature. His voice dropped. I gave them a century to change. They didn't. So I burned it all down. The bloodlines. The alliances. The carefully built power structures. He looked at her then, and his eyes were ancient. I killed every vampire who bore my house name. All 37 of them. Alara's mouth went dry. That's monstrous? Yes. He stood abruptly, turning toward the window. But necessary. And I'd do it again. She should have been terrified. Should have grabbed Lily and run. But instead, she found herself asking, do you regret it? Every night. His reflection in the glass looked haunted. But regret doesn't absolve. It just teaches you to live with what you've done. That night, Alara found Lily sitting on the stairs, hugging her knees to her chest. Can't sleep? Alara asked, settling beside her. I heard shouting. Downstairs. Was he mad at you? No, we were just talking. About the bad vampires? Yes. Lily was quiet for a moment. Is Dorian a bad vampire? Alara considered the question. The easy answer was yes. He'd admitted to killing 37 of his own kind. But the truth was more complicated. I think, she said slowly, he's a vampire who's trying very hard to be good. And that's harder than being bad. Why? Because being good means making difficult choices. It means sometimes hurting people to protect others. It means living with guilt. Alara tucked a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. Bad is easy. Good takes work. Lily thought about this. Mama tried to be good, but the boyfriend made it hard. I know, sweetheart. Do you think she's okay? Wherever she is now. Alara's throat tightened. I think she loved you very much. And I think, wherever she is, she's proud of how brave you've been. Lily leaned against her shoulder. Will you teach me to be brave like you? I'm not brave. You are. You stayed even when you were scared. That's what Dorian said. He said bravery is staying when running would be easier. Alara's chest ached. When did he say that? This morning. When I asked him why he didn't just give us to House Thorn and make them leave him alone. Lily yawned. He said some things are worth fighting for. Even if you lose. Smart monster. Alara murmured. The smartest, Lily agreed, her eyes already closing. Chapter 7. The Seagoth attack came on the 7th night. Alara woke to the sound of glass shattering. Not loud, almost delicate, like wind chimes breaking, but in the perfect silence of the house, it rang like an alarm. She was on her feet before conscious thought caught up, her hand, already reaching for Lily. The girl stirred, groggy and confused. What shh? Alara pressed a finger to her lips, listening. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Moving through the lower floors with predatory precision. The door burst open. Dorian stood in the threshold, his face a mask of cold fury. Basement. Now. What's happening? House Thorn is done being patient. He grabbed her arm, pulling her into the hallway. They're invoking the right of retrieval. The what? A legal loophole. If they can prove the child witnessed a crime and I'm harboring her illegally, they can challenge my protection. His grip tightened. It's bullshit, but it gives them grounds to enter. Another crash from downstairs. Closer now. Dorian shoved them toward the back staircase. There's a room in the basement. Reinforced door. Lock it from the inside. Don't open it for anyone but me. What about you? I'm going to remind them why challenging me was a mistake. His eyes flashed with something predatory, something that made him look less human than she'd ever seen. Go, now. Alara grabbed Lily's hand and ran. The basement stairs were narrow and steep, the walls closing in as they descended. Behind them, she heard voices cold, cultured, speaking that same broken Latin Dorian used. And underneath it, a sound that made her blood freeze. Screaming, she pushed Lily ahead of her, nearly stumbling in the darkness. The basement was a maze of storage rooms and old wine racks. She'd never been down here before. Dorian had made it clear it was off limits. Now she understood why. The walls were covered in symbols, carved deep into stone, filled with something that looked like silver. Protection wards maybe, or warnings. There, Lily pointed to a heavy iron door at the far end. Alara dragged it open. The room beyond was small, windowless, lined with more of those strange symbols. A single lamp hung from the ceiling, already lit, as though someone had been expecting them. She pulled Lily inside and slammed the door. The lock engaged with a solid thunk. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't. Above them, the house shook. Something heavy hit the floor. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the walls. What's happening? Lily's voice was very small. Dorian's fighting. Alara pulled the girl close, wrapping her arms around her. He's keeping them away from us. What if he loses? Alara didn't have an answer for that. The sounds of battle lasted 17 minutes. Alara counted each one, her pulse hammering against her ribs. She heard crashes, snarls, sounds that couldn't possibly come from anything human. Once, she heard Dorian's voice low and commanding, speaking words in that ancient language. Then silence. Terrible, absolute silence. Lily whimpered against her chest. Is he dead? I don't know. What do we do if he is? Alara's mind raced. The room had no other exits. If House Thorn got through that door, they were trapped. She scanned the space, looking for anything she could use as a weapon. Nothing. Just stone walls and silver symbols, and her gaze caught on something in the corner. A leather bag, half hidden in shadow. She crossed to it. Lily still clutched to her side, and pulled it open. Inside, a cell phone, cash, 2 passports with their photos, but different names, and a set of car keys. An escape plan. Dorian had prepared an escape plan for them. The realization made her throat tight. He'd known this might happen, known he might not be able to protect them, and he'd made sure they had a way out anyway. Alara, Lily's voice cracked. The handle was turning. Alara grabbed the bag, positioning herself between Lily and the door. Her hand closed around the only thing in the room that could possibly serve as a weapon, the iron lampstand. The door swung open. Dorian stood in the threshold. He looked like he'd walked through a war. His shirt was shredded, his skin marked with burns that were already healing. Blood not his, she hoped, splattered across his chest and face. His eyes were wild and human, the pupils blown wide with violence. When he saw them, something shifted. The wildness receded, replaced by exhaustion so profound it looked physical. "They're gone," he said. His voice was rough, scraped raw. "For now." Alara lowered the lampstand with shaking hands. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing permanent." He leaned against the doorframe as though standing required too much effort. "They brought 6. All younger vampires, easier to control. Thorn didn't come himself to smart for that. 6 against 1. I've faced worse odds." But the way he said it suggested those odds had cost him. Lily pulled away from Alara and crossed to Dorian. She stared up at him, this small human child studying an ancient predator covered in blood. "You kept your promise," she said. Something in Dorian's expression cracked. He dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her level, despite the obvious pain it caused. "I did," he said quietly, "and I'll keep doing it. But Lily, I need you to understand something. This won't be the last time they come, and next time, they'll bring more. So we fight more." Lily's chin lifted with a defiance that was heartbreaking in its innocence. "You don't fight. You hide. You stay safe." He glanced at Alara. "Both of you. We can help," Alara said. "No, Dorian, you're mortal. Fragile. One of them could kill you in seconds." His voice hardened. "You can't help. You can only survive." The words stung more than they should have. Alara's jaw tightened. "So what? We just hide in the basement forever? Wait for you to fight our battles? If that keeps you alive, yes. That's not living. That's just existing." Dorian rose to his full height, and for a moment, the predator was fully visible, cold, ancient, barely leashed. "Existing is preferable to dying. Trust me on this. I didn't ask for your protection so I could become a prisoner. You didn't ask for it at all. I offered. And part of that offer is keeping you locked away where you can't get yourself killed. Through some misguided sense of autonomy, agency." Alara stepped forward, anger burning through her fear. "I'm not a possession, Dorian. I'm not something you get to lock in a basement for safekeeping." His eyes flashed. "You think I want this? You think I enjoy treating you like—" He stopped, turned away sharply. "Like what?" Alara demanded. "Like something precious." The words came out rough. "Like something I can't afford to lose." The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Alara's anger faltered. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands curled into fists, the careful distance he maintained even now. "You barely know me," she said quietly. "I know enough." He still wouldn't look at her. "I know you stand between victims and violence even when you shouldn't. I know you make promises to children you can't keep because the alternative is letting them lose hope. I know you live on the edges of society because you think you don't deserve to take up space." His voice dropped. "And I know if something happened to you because of me, I wouldn't survive it." Alara's breath caught. Lily looked between them, her eyes wide. "Are you two going to kiss now? Because in my books, this is usually when they kiss." Despite everything, the blood, the fear, the impossible situation, Dorian laughed. It was short, surprised, but genuine. "No," he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "We're not going to kiss." "Oh." Lily sounded disappointed. "Okay." He finally turned back to Alara. "But we are going to have a conversation. About boundaries. About what you're willing to risk. About what happens next." "What does happen next?" "House. Thorn violated the terms of the declaration by attacking directly. That gives me legal grounds to retaliate." His expression hardened. "And I intend to make them regret ever learning your name." Chapter 8. The weight of trust. The house felt different after the attack. Alara noticed it immediately, the way shadows seemed darker, the silence heavier. Dorian had spent hours repairing the damage, replacing shattered windows with boards, reinforcing doors with iron bars. The symbols on the walls glowed faintly now, pulsing with a silver light she hadn't noticed before. Magic, she realized. He'd activated some kind of protective magic. She found him in the study at dawn, staring at the map of the city. The red pins had multiplied. New ones marked what she assumed were House Thorn's locations: nightclubs, warehouses, a shipping company on the waterfront, You should sleep, he said, without turning around. So should you. We've been over this. I know. She moved to stand beside him, studying the map. But you look like you're about to collapse. Vampires don't collapse. We simply slow down. His finger traced a route between two pins. The attack last night was reconnaissance. They wanted to see my defenses, test my response time, gauge whether you were worth the resources they'd need to extract you, and they learned I'm willing to kill for you, which means you're more valuable than they initially assumed. He finally looked at her, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes, not physical, but something deeper, soul deep. They'll be back, with better planning, more vampires, possibly Thorn himself. Alar's stomach tightened. How long do we have? Days, maybe a week if we're lucky. He straightened, rolling his shoulders as though trying to shake off the weight pressing down on them. I've called in favors, reached out to the few vampires in this city who aren't completely under Thorn's control. They'll watch, report movements, but they won't fight for us. That risk is too great, so it's still just you. It's always been just me. The loneliness in those words made her chest ache. She thought of what he'd told her, how he'd destroyed his entire house, killed 37 vampires who bore his name. How many centuries had he spent alone after that? How many years of isolation, of being the vampire everyone feared but no one trusted? You have us now, she said quietly. Dorian's expression shifted. Something vulnerable flickered across his face before he locked it down. That's what worries me. Why? Because caring about people makes you weak. It gives your enemies leverage. And House Thorn will use that leverage until there's nothing left of you to break. He turned away, busying himself with the map. I should never have brought you here. Should have sent you away the moment I saw you in that alley. But you didn't. No, I made the selfish choice. The dangerous one. His hands pressed flat against the table. And now you're trapped in a war that has nothing to do with you. Alar moved around the table to face him. Lily has everything to do with this war. Her mother died because she witnessed something she shouldn't have. That little girl upstairs is terrified and traumatized and completely alone except for us. She held his gaze. So maybe you made the selfish choice. But it was also the right one. Right and selfish aren't mutually exclusive. No, but neither are selfishness and compassion. She reached out carefully, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, she rested her hand over his. His skin was cool, smooth as marble. You're not the monster you think you are, Dorian. You don't know what I am. Then tell me. No more half-truths or cryptic warnings. Tell me who you really are. He was silent for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then I was turned in 1647, in England. During the Civil War, his voice was distant, as though recounting someone else's story. My maker was a lord who collected beautiful things, people, art, weapons. He saw me on a battlefield and decided I was worth keeping. Alar's throat tightened. He didn't ask permission. Vampires rarely do. Consent is a modern concept. Back then, you took what you wanted and justified it with power. Dorian's jaw tightened. He kept me for a decade. Taught me to hunt, to kill, to see humans as cattle. And I believed him. For 50 years, I believed every word. What changed? I met a girl, human, dying of consumption in a London workhouse. She was 19, and she'd never hurt anyone. But the world had decided she was worthless. His eyes were distant, lost in memory. She asked me if dying hurt. I told her the truth that it did, but the pain ended. She smiled and said that was good, that she was tired of hurting. Alar's vision blurred. I tried to save her, offered to turn her, give her immortality. She refused. His voice cracked just barely. She said she'd rather die human than live as a monster. So I sat with her, held her hand while she died, and I realized he stopped, swallowing hard. I realized my maker had stolen that choice from me, stolen my death, my humanity, everything. So you left him. I killed him, and every vampire he'd created. And then I tried to kill myself. He said it matter-of-factly, as though discussing the weather. But suicide is difficult when you're already dead. The sun burns, but slowly. Starvation hurts, but doesn't finish the job. I spent a century trying to die and failing. What stopped you? Exhaustion, boredom, the realization that if I was going to exist, I might as well make that existence mean something. He finally looked at her. So I started protecting instead of predating, saving instead of killing. It doesn't erase what I've done, doesn't make me good, but it makes the centuries more bearable. Alara's hand tightened over his. You're more than your worst moments, Dorian. Am I? Or am I just a monster playing at redemption? Does it matter? If your actions save lives, if you choose to protect instead of destroy, isn't that what defines you? Not what you were, but what you choose to be now. He stared at their joined hands. You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's true. She stepped closer. You've spent 3 centuries punishing yourself. Maybe it's time to forgive. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not. But Lily deserves a protector who believes he's worth fighting for. And so do I. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or hope, fragile and tentative. Before he could respond, Lily's voice called from upstairs. Alara, I'm hungry. The moment broke. Dorian pulled his hand away carefully. You should feed her, he said. There's fresh bread in the kitchen. I brought it last night. When? While you were sleeping. I make supply runs after midnight. He turned back to the map, the vulnerability disappearing behind familiar walls. And Alara, yes? Thank you. For the optimism. Even if it's misplaced. It's not, she said firmly. You'll see. She found Lily in the library again, surrounded by new books. Different ones this time, not fairy tales, but histories. Old leather-bound volumes with gilt lettering. Where did these come from? Alara asked. Dorian brought them. He said if I'm going to live with vampires, I should understand their history. Lily traced a finger over an illustration of a medieval castle. Did you know they used to have kings? Like, actual vampire kings who ruled territories? I didn't. Dorian said his maker served one. A king in France who got his head cut off during the revolution. Lily turned the page. He said most of the old kings are dead now. That the modern houses killed them because they were too cruel. Alara sat beside her. When did he tell you all this? This morning, early, before you woke up. Lily's expression was serious. He's teaching me, he says, knowledge is armor. That if I understand how vampires think, I can protect myself better. Smart. He also said you're brave, but reckless. And that I should remind you to be careful, because you don't have vampire healing. Lily looked up at her. Are you being reckless? Alara thought of the conversation in the study. Of the way she'd pushed Dorian to open up, to trust her with truths he clearly didn't share easily. Maybe a little, she admitted. Good. Dorian needs someone reckless. He's too careful. Too alone. Lily returned to her book. He told me loneliness is the worst kind of death. Slower than starvation. More painful than the sun. Alara's throat tightened. He said that? He said he'd rather burn than be alone again. Lily's voice dropped to a whisper. I told him he's not alone anymore. That he has us. And he smiled. A real one. Not the scary one. That's good, Lily. I know. The girl paused. Do you think we'll survive this? The war with House Thorn? Alara wanted to lie. Wanted to promise safety and happy endings. But Lily deserved honesty. I don't know, she said quietly. But I think we have a better chance with Dorian than without him. Me too. Lily leaned against her shoulder. And even if we don't survive, at least we'll be together. That's better than being alone. Alara wrapped an arm around her, blinking back tears. Yes, it is. Chapter 9. The quiet before the days blurred together in strange, suspended peace. House Thorn didn't attack again. No shattered windows. No vampires testing the defenses. Just silence heavy and watchful, like the eye of a hurricane. Dorian grew more tense with each passing hour. They're planning something, he said on the 5th night, pacing the length of the study. Thorn doesn't retreat without reason. He's regrouping, strategizing. Alara watched him from the doorway. He'd been like this for hours, restless, unable to settle. She'd never seen him so agitated. When did you last feed? She asked quietly. He stopped mid-stride. That's irrelevant. It's been 9 days, Dorian. Since before we arrived. I said it's irrelevant. You're getting weaker. I can see it. She stepped into the room. Your hands shake when you think I'm not looking. You move slower. And yesterday, when you lifted those boards, it took effort. Real effort. His jaw tightened. I'm managing. You're starving. She crossed her arms. What happens if House Thorn attacks and you're too weak to fight? That won't happen. How do you know? Because I've survived worse on less. But the conviction in his voice wavered. Alara moved closer. Where do you usually feed? There must be a system. Other vampires do it without killing. You told me that yourself. blood banks, hospitals. I have arrangements. Dorian turned away. But I can't leave you and Lily unprotected. The moment I step outside these walls, Thorn will know. He's watching. Then feed here. The silence that followed was absolute. Dorian turned slowly, his expression unreadable. What? You heard me. Alara's pulse hammered, but she kept her voice steady. Feed from me. Just enough to keep you strong. No, Dorian, absolutely not. His eyes flashed with something dangerous. Do you have any idea what you're suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop being noble to the point of stupidity. She stepped closer, refusing to back down despite the predatory tension radiating from him. You need blood. I have blood. It's practical. It's insane. He moved away, putting the desk between them. I haven't fed directly from a human in 200 years. There's a reason for that. Which is control. The word came out rough. Taking blood from a living source is different, more intense. The connection, he stopped, hands gripping the desk's edge. It's intimate, dangerous. I could hurt you without meaning to. Could take too much. Could you won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Alara circled the desk. Because you've spent 3 centuries learning control. Because you destroyed your entire house rather than become what they were. Because you care too much about keeping us safe to risk it. Dorian's laugh was bitter. You have extraordinary faith in a monster's restraint. You're not a monster. You're a man who's afraid of losing control. She reached out, resting her hand on his arm. His skin was cooler than it should be, colder than usual. How long can you go without feeding before you become dangerous? He was silent. Dorian. How long? A month. Maybe 6 weeks. His voice dropped. But I won't be able to fight effectively after 3 weeks. Won't be able to protect you. It's been 9 days. That gives us 12 before you start weakening. Seriously. Alara's grip tightened. But why wait? Why risk it when there's a solution right here? Because once I start, I might not be able to stop. The raw honesty in those words stole her breath. She saw the fear in his eyes, not of her, but of himself, of what he might become if he let the hunger take over. Then I'll stop you, she said firmly. How? She thought for a moment, then reached for the silver letter opener on his desk. Iron burns you, right? You said the symbols are made of silver. Silver slows healing, makes us vulnerable. Then I'll hold this. She gripped the blade carefully. If you don't stop when I ask, I'll use it. Dorian stared at her as though she'd lost her mind. You're suggesting I feed from you while you hold a weapon against me. I'm suggesting we trust each other. Alara met his gaze. You've trusted me with Lily, with your history, with the truth about who you are. Let me trust you with this. This is different. Why? Because it's physical? Because it requires you to accept help instead of giving it? She softened her voice. Dorian, you can't protect us if you collapse. And I can't watch you slowly starve yourself out of some misguided sense of chivalry. He looked away, and she saw the war playing out across his features: hunger versus control, need versus fear. There are rules, he said finally. If we do this, and I'm not agreeing, not yet, but if we do, there are rules. Tell me, you choose where. Wrist is safest. Neck is. He swallowed hard. Too intimate. Too dangerous. Okay, wrist. You tell me when to stop. The moment you feel dizzy or weak or scared, you say stop, and I stop. Immediately. I will. And afterward, you eat. Drink water. Rest. Blood loss isn't trivial, Alara. Even a small amount can affect you. I understand. She paused. What about you? What do you need? His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw the hunger there, carefully controlled but undeniably present. To not hurt you. That's all I need. She set the letter opener on the desk with an easy reach, then extended her left wrist. Then don't. Dorian stared at her offered wrist as though it were a trap. You're certain? Yes. If I lose control, you won't. She said it with more confidence than she felt. But if you do, I'll stab you. And then we'll both have learned something. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Your logic is deeply flawed, so feed from me and prove me wrong. He moved closer, slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When she didn't pull away, he took her wrist in his hands. His touch was gentle, reverent almost. This will hurt, he warned. Not like in stories. There's no venom to dull the pain. It's just teeth, breaking skin. I've had worse. No, you haven't. Before she could respond, he bent his head and bit. The pain was instant and sharp, like twin needles piercing flesh. Alara gasped, her free hand instinctively reaching for the letter opener. But then something changed. The pain shifted, softened, became something warmer, almost pleasant. She felt the pull of her blood leaving her body, felt Dorian's careful control in every measured draw. His hands tightened on her wrists, not hurting, but anchoring. As though he needed the contact as much as the blood. Time seemed to slow. Alara watched his face, saw the tension gradually leave his shoulders, saw color return to his too pale skin. He was still beautiful and humanly so, but now he looked less like a marble statue and more like something alive, after what felt like both seconds and hours. He pulled back. His eyes were darker now, pupils blown wide. Her blood stained his lips. He looked dangerous and raw, and more real than she'd ever seen him. Enough, he said hoarsely. Alara nodded, suddenly dizzy. She gripped the desk's edge for support. Dorian was already moving, pressing a clean cloth against the wounds on her wrist, applying pressure with practiced efficiency. Sit. Now. She sat. He disappeared and returned seconds later with water, orange juice, and bread with honey. Drink. Eat. Your body needs to replace what you've lost. Alara bade, noting the steadiness in his hands now, the clarity in his eyes. He looked stronger, more present. How do you feel? She asked. Like I've remembered what it means to be alive. He crouched before her, checking her pupils, her pulse. And you? Lightheaded. But okay. That will pass. The wounds will heal in a few days. He bandaged her wrist carefully, his movements precise. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She touched his cheek with her free hand. We're in this together, remember? That means taking care of each other. He caught her hand, holding it against his face for a brief moment. His skin was warmer now. You're reckless and stubborn, and entirely too brave for your own good, so I've been told. I mean it, Alara. What you just did was. He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. No one has offered me that kind of trust in centuries. If ever, then it's long overdue. They stayed like that for a long moment, his hand covering hers, her blood still on his lips. The space between them charged with something neither quite knew how to name. A small cough from the doorway broke the spell. Lily stood there, clutching her fairy tale book. Are you two done being weird? Because I had a nightmare, and I need someone to read to me. Dorian stood quickly, clearing his throat. Of course. What chapter? The one where the princess stabs the dragon. Lily patted into the room. It's my favorite. Mine too, Dorian said softly, glancing at Alara. Chapter 10. When the world-end attack came at midnight on the 10th day. This time, there was no warning. No shattering glass. No measured footsteps. Just an explosion that tore through the front of the house like the hand of an angry god. Alara woke to fire and screaming. She grabbed Lily, already awake, already terrified, and rolled off the bed as the ceiling cracked above them. Plaster rained down in chunks, followed by wooden beams that crashed where they'd been sleeping seconds before. Basement. Dorian's voice roared through the house. Get to the basement now. But the hallway was engulfed in flames. Alara pulled Lily toward the window instead, yanking it open. The drop was 20 feet to the garden below. Survivable, if they were lucky. The bedroom door exploded inward. A vampire stood in the wreckage, female, young-looking but with eyes that spoke of decades. She smiled, revealing elongated canines. Going somewhere? Alara shoved Lily behind her. Stay back. Or what? You'll bore me to death with human bravado? The vampire took a step forward. Lord Thorn wants the child. Give her to me and you can walk away. You're not part of this. She's 6 years old. She's a witness. A liability. The vampire's head snapped to the side as Dorian materialized from the smoke and drove his fist through her chest. She crumpled. Not dead, but immobilized, gasping as her body tried to heal around the damage. Dorian didn't look at her. His eyes were on Alara, wild and desperate. Jump. I'll catch you. The drop. I said I'll catch you. Do it now. Another explosion shook the house. The floor beneath them groaned. Alara grabbed Lily, climbed onto the windowsill, and jumped. The fall seemed to last forever. Wind rushed past her face, Lily's scream piercing her ears. Then impact not with the ground, but with Dorian, who'd somehow reached the garden before they landed. His arms closed around them, absorbing the shock. He set them down and immediately positioned himself between them and the burning house. Run, he ordered. The car is in the garage to blocks east. Keys are in the bag I left in the basement room. Go, now. What about you? I'm ending this. His voice was cold, lethal. Tonight, Vampires poured from the shadows, 6, 8, 10 of them. More than Alara could count. They circled like wolves, blocking every exit, and behind them, walking with leisurely confidence, was a man who could only be Lord Thorn. He was exactly as Dorian's sketch had depicted: sharp features, cold eyes, an aristocratic bearing that spoke of centuries of unchallenged power. He wore an immaculate black suit and smiled like a man who'd already won. "Dorian," he said pleasantly, "you've caused me considerable inconvenience." "Good." Dorian's hands curled into claws. "I was aiming for catastrophic, but I'll take inconvenience." Witty as ever. "I'd forgotten how entertaining you could be." Thorn's gaze slid to Alara and Lily. "Are these really worth dying for? A broken woman and a mongrel child?" "Careful." Dorian's voice dropped to something inhuman. "My patience has limits, as does mine. And you've exhausted them." Thorn gestured lazily. "Kill him. Take the child. Leave the woman. I want her to watch." The vampires lunged. What followed was carnage. Dorian moved like violence incarnate, faster than Alara's eyes could track. More brutal than anything she could have imagined. He tore through the attacking vampires with methodical precision, snapping necks, breaking spines, reducing centuries-old predators to broken things on the ground. But there were too many. For every vampire he destroyed, 2 more appeared. They swarmed him, dragging him down through sheer numbers. Alara watched in horror as he disappeared beneath a mass of bodies. "No." She started forward. Lily grabbed her arm. "Don't." He said, "Run." "I can't just. You promised." Lily's voice cracked. "You promised you'd keep me safe. You promised." The words stopped her. Because Lily was right. She'd made that promise in the alley, and again in this house, and every day since. And breaking it now, getting herself killed in a fight she couldn't win, would mean Lily died too. So Alara ran. She grabbed Lily's hand and sprinted toward the street, her heart shattering with every step that took her further from Dorian. Behind them, the sounds of battle rage, screams, crashes, Dorian's voice roaring something in that ancient language. They reached the garage, found the car, an older sedan, nondescript. The keys were in the ignition, as though Dorian had prepared for exactly this scenario. Alara's hands shook as she started the engine. "Wait," Lily whispered. "Look." Through the rearview mirror, Alara saw the impossible. Dorian emerged from the mass of vampires like a demon rising from hell. His clothes were shredded, his body covered in wounds that smoked and hissed as they tried to heal. But he was standing, fighting, refusing to fall. He caught one vampire by the throat and used her as a weapon, swinging her into 3 others. They went down in a tangle of limbs, but Thorn was moving now. The older vampire crossed the distance in a blur, faster than anything Alara had seen. He grabbed Dorian from behind, one hand closing around his throat, the other driving something a stake. She realized with horror toward his chest. Dorian twisted at the last second. The stake pierced his shoulder instead of his heart. He screamed, a sound of pure agony that tore through the night. Alara's foot hovered over the gas pedal. Run. She should run. That's what Dorian wanted. What he'd ordered her to do. But the image of him dying alone, surrounded by enemies, was more than she could bear. Her gaze fell on the emergency kit in the passenger seat. Inside, a flare gun. She grabbed it. "Stay in the car," she told Lily. "Lock the doors. If I'm not back into minutes drive, don't stop until you reach the police station on Hamilton Street. Tell them everything. Show them the scars. Make them believe you." Alara, no, but she was already out of the car, running back toward the burning house with a flare gun in one hand and absolutely no plan. The vampires didn't notice her at first, focused on Dorian, on finishing what they'd started. Thorn had him pinned now, the stake driven deeper into his shoulder, immobilizing him. "You should have stayed hidden," Thorn said conversationally. "Should have let me have the child. Now you die, and I take her anyway. What did your noble sacrifice accomplish?" This? Dorian's bloody smile was terrible. "Alara, now." She aimed the flare gun at the nearest cluster of vampires and fired. The flare exploded in a burst of white-hot magnesium, brighter than the sun. The vampires shrieked, recoiling from the light, their skin smoking where it touched them. In the chaos, Dorian tore free. He yanked the stake from his shoulder with a wet sound that made Alara's stomach turn, then drove it through the nearest vampire's eye socket. The creature disintegrated into ash. "I told you to run," Dorian shouted, grabbing Alara's arm. "I don't take orders well." I noticed. But there was something in his voice that might have been admiration, or fury, possibly both. he pulled her toward the car, moving with inhuman speed despite his wounds. Behind them, Thorn was already recovering, shouting commands to his remaining forces. They reached the sedan. Dorian shoved Alara into the driver's seat, then threw himself into the passenger side. Drive, don't stop, don't look back. Alara floored the accelerator. The car lurched forward, tires screaming. In the rearview mirror, she saw Thorn standing in the middle of the burning wreckage, watching them flee with an expression of cold calculation. He wasn't chasing them. He didn't need to. He knew where they were going. Knew they had nowhere left to hide. The safe house, Dorian gasped, pressing a hand to his shoulder. Too much blood seeped between his fingers. 3 miles north, gray building, apartment 7C. The key is. He slumped against the window, unconscious. Dorian. Alara's voice cracked. Lily climbed into the front seat, small hands pressing against Dorian's wound. He's still breathing. Sort of. Do vampires breathe? I don't know. Alara's vision blurred with tears she couldn't afford to shed. Not yet. Not while they were still running. She drove north, following instinct more than direction, and prayed they'd survive long enough to see dawn. Behind them, the house burned like a funeral pyre, and somewhere in the city, Lord Thorne smiled.